You think you're chasing pleasure. But Machiavelli understood something you don't. Desire isn't power, it's weakness disguised as passion. Every time you surrender without control, you lose more than energy. You lose respect, direction, and your masculine edge. Today, you'll hear the brutal truth he tried to warn men about, a truth so uncomfortable that most will never face it. Here's what Machiavelli observed that modern men refuse to accept. The strongest drive you have is also your greatest vulnerability. While you believe your sexual desire makes you powerful and masculine, those who truly understand power know it makes you predictable, controllable, and weak. They use your desire against you while you think you're expressing strength. Every powerful man throughout history who fell from grace had one thing in common. His desire was weaponized against him, not by force, but by those who understood that a man driven by uncontrolled desire is a man who can be led anywhere. Machiavelli saw this pattern repeatedly and tried to warn future generations, but the truth was too painful for most men to accept. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how your desire has been turned into a leash around your neck, why the modern world deliberately amplifies male desire to keep men weak and distracted, and the specific strategies Machiavelli recommended for transforming your greatest weakness into your greatest source of power. If you've ever felt drained after pursuing pleasure, lost respect from others because of choices driven by desire, or found yourself making decisions that served others' interests rather than your own, this message is specifically for you. Hit that like button if you're ready to hear uncomfortable truths about masculine power. Subscribe with notifications on because I share these deep strategic insights regularly. Knowledge that most men will never have the courage to face. Let's begin with why your desire is destroying your life. Here's the brutal truth that will shatter everything you believe about masculine power. Your desire isn't making you strong. It's making you the easiest target in the room. Every time you act from uncontrolled desire, you're broadcasting your weakness to everyone around you, giving them a direct path to manipulate, control, and ultimately destroy your masculine authority. Machiavelli understood what modern men refuse to face. Desire creates predictability, and predictability is the death of power. When others know what you want, they know exactly how to control you. When they understand your triggers, they can pull those triggers whenever they need you to act against your own interests. Your desire becomes their remote control over your life. Think about the last time your desire led you into a situation that drained your energy, cost you respect, or made you act beneath your standards. That wasn't weakness of character. That was the inevitable result of operating from uncontrolled desire. You became predictable, and predictable men get used by those who understand how desire actually works. Here's what's happening that you don't see. While you're focused on the object of your desire, others are focused on using your desire as a weapon against you. They amplify it, redirect it, and exploit it. They create situations where your desire overwhelms your judgment, knowing that a man driven by desire will make decisions that serve their interests rather than his own. The weakness isn't in having desire, it's in being controlled by it. When your desire drives your decisions, you're no longer making strategic choices based on what serves your long-term power and respect. You're making reactive choices based on immediate gratification, and reactive men are weak men regardless of how physically strong or professionally successful they appear. Machiavelli wrote that, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand." What people see when you're driven by uncontrolled desire is desperation disguised as passion. They see someone who can be led, manipulated, and controlled through their appetites. They recognize that you're not the master of your own impulses, which means you can't be trusted to master anything else that matters. This shows up in countless ways throughout your daily interactions. You make compromises you shouldn't make because your desire clouds your judgment. You tolerate disrespect because your desire makes you dependent on others' approval or attention. You waste energy on pursuits that drain rather than build your power because desire feels more urgent than strategy. The most successful people you know, both men and women, understand this principle instinctively. They recognize desire-driven men immediately and use that knowledge to their advantage. They offer just enough of what you want to keep you engaged while extracting maximum value from your predictable responses. You think you're pursuing pleasure, but you're actually being farmed for your energy, resources, and attention. Here's the devastating cycle that most men never recognize. Uncontrolled desire leads to poor decisions. Poor decisions lead to loss of respect. Loss of respect leads to desperation for validation, and desperation for validation makes desire even more controlling. Each cycle makes you weaker and more manipulable than the last. The solution isn't to eliminate desire. That's impossible and would drain you of the drive that creates achievement. The solution is to transform from being desire's slave to being desire's master. This means your desire serves your strategic goals rather than undermining them. It means you channel sexual energy into building power rather than dissipating it through instant gratification. Think about the men you most respect and admire. They don't appear desperate or driven by their appetites. They seem centered, controlled, and strategic in their choices. This isn't because they lack desire. It's because they've learned to harness desire as fuel for building the life they want, rather than letting it burn through their energy randomly. When you're controlled by desire, you become a consumer, rather than a creator. You spend your time, energy, and resources pursuing experiences and sensations that others provide, making you dependent on their supply. When you control your desire, you become a creator who uses that energy to build something valuable that others want access to, reversing the power dynamic entirely. Here's what Machiavelli observed that destroys most men's illusions about power. The people who control outcomes are never the ones driven by desire. They're the ones who understand how to exploit desire in others. While you're consumed by what you want, they're calculating how to use your wanting against you. This is the brutal truth about masculine weakness that most men will never accept. Machiavelli spent his life studying power dynamics in the most cutthroat political environment in history. He watched brilliant, strong, capable men destroy themselves not through external enemies, but through their own uncontrolled appetites. He saw desire turn potential leaders into puppets, strategic minds into reactive slaves, and powerful men into tools used by those who remained detached and calculating. The brutal truth is this: desire makes you predictable, and predictable people can never hold real power. When Machiavelli wrote about the importance of being both the lion and the fox, he understood that desire turns you into prey. The lion's strength becomes irrelevant when the fox knows exactly which bait will make the lion walk into any trap. Here's the pattern Machiavelli recognized that modern men refuse to see. Every man who falls from power falls because someone else weaponized his desire against him. Not through force or superior strategy, but by offering him what he craved most and letting his appetite destroy his judgment. The desire that felt like strength became the mechanism of his downfall. Think about this in your own life. The times you've lost respect, made poor decisions, or found yourself in situations that drained your energy. How many of those situations began with someone offering you something you desired? They didn't force you into weakness. They invited you into it by understanding what you couldn't resist. Machiavelli wrote that men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate necessities that a deceiver will never lack victims for his deceptions. The immediate necessity he's describing is desire overwhelming strategic thinking. When your desire becomes urgent, your ability to see manipulation disappears entirely. The people who control outcomes in your professional and personal life understand this principle intimately. They don't try to overpower your logic. They amplify your desire until logic becomes irrelevant. They create situations where saying no to what you want feels impossible, knowing that desire-driven choices consistently serve their interests rather than yours. Here's what's particularly brutal about this truth. The stronger your desire, the weaker your position becomes. A man with intense sexual desire becomes easy to manipulate through sexual opportunity. A man with intense desire for recognition becomes easy to control through praise and status symbols. A man with intense desire for comfort becomes easy to exploit through luxury and convenience. Machiavelli observed that the most dangerous people are those who appear to have no obvious desires. They seem content, self-sufficient, and unimpressed by the things that drive others wild. This is not because they lack desire. It's because they've learned to conceal their desires while studying yours. They remain mysterious while making you transparent. The brutal truth extends to how society is deliberately structured to keep men desire-driven and therefore weak. Every industry built around instant gratification understands that keeping you focused on what you want prevents you from building what you need. They profit from your desire while ensuring that satisfying it never leads to lasting fulfillment or genuine power. When you're driven by uncontrolled desire, you become a consumer in every interaction instead of a creator. You're seeking what others provide rather than building what others seek. This reversal of position destroys masculine authority because authority comes from being the source of value, not the seeker of satisfaction. Machiavelli's most devastating insight was that desire-driven men always believe they're pursuing strength while actually surrendering it. They think sexual conquest makes them powerful while it makes them dependent. They think pursuing pleasure makes them free while it makes them enslaved to whatever provides that pleasure. They confuse intensity with strength and mistake appetite for authority. The brutal truth is that every moment you spend being driven by desire is a moment someone else spends calculating how to use that drive for their benefit. While you're focused on getting what you want, they're focused on using your wanting to get what they want. The game is rigged against anyone who plays from a position of need rather than strength. Here's the most uncomfortable part. Recognizing this truth means acknowledging that much of what you've called masculine strength has actually been masculine weakness. The very behaviors you thought demonstrated power have been demonstrations of how easily your power can be redirected by those who understand desire better than you do. But Machiavelli didn't just diagnose the problem, he provided the solution. The men who achieve lasting power and respect are those who learn to use desire as energy for building rather than burning. They transform from being desire's victim to being desire's master, which fundamentally changes how others perceive and interact with their masculine authority. Here's the silent energy leak destroying your masculine authority. Every time you act from uncontrolled desire, you're transferring your life force to whoever controls what you want. Machiavelli observed that powerful men conserve their energy for strategic goals, while weak men dissipate it through constant gratification seeking. Your sexual energy is literally your creative force. The same energy that builds empires, achieves goals, and commands respect. When you waste this energy through uncontrolled release, you're draining the very source of your masculine power. Notice how depleted you feel after pursuing instant gratification versus how energized you feel after meaningful accomplishment. The modern world deliberately promotes sexual overconsumption because it keeps men weak and manageable. Porn, casual hookups, and instant gratification industries profit from keeping you in a constant state of depletion. A man with no stored sexual energy has no sustained focus for building real power. When your desire constantly seeks external satisfaction, you become dependent on others for your masculine fulfillment. This dependency destroys your authority because true power comes from being self-sufficient and having others depend on you, not the reverse. Machiavelli understood that the strongest men channel sexual energy into achievement rather than burning it randomly. They use desire as fuel for building something valuable instead of consuming what others provide. This is why great leaders often appear sexually restrained. They're redirecting that energy into empire building. Here's the power game most men never recognize. Sex isn't about pleasure. It's about energy exchange and psychological dominance. While you think you're pursuing physical satisfaction, you're actually engaging in a power dynamic where whoever needs it more automatically loses authority and control. The hidden game operates on simple principles. The person with less sexual desperation holds more power. When you approach from need rather than choice, you've surrendered the dominant position before the interaction begins. When your satisfaction depends on someone else's cooperation, they control the entire dynamic. Machiavelli would immediately recognize this as the same principle governing all power relationships. Whoever needs the arrangement more gets the worst deal. In sexual dynamics, the desire-driven person always pays the higher price in energy, resources, respect, and ultimately their masculine authority. Think about the men who seem most sexually successful. They're not the ones desperately chasing or constantly seeking validation through sexual conquest. They're the ones who've built lives so compelling that others chase them. They understand that sexual power comes from being desired rather than desiring. The most devastating aspect of this game is that pursuing sex from neediness actually repels the very thing you're seeking. Desperation is universally unattractive because it signals weakness and lack of options. The more you need sexual validation, the less likely you are to receive it on terms that build rather than destroy your power. Here's Machiavelli's ultimate solution for transforming your greatest weakness into your greatest strength. Master strategic sexual discipline. This means deliberately controlling when and how you engage sexually to build rather than drain your masculine power. Using desire as fuel for creating the life others want access to, strategic discipline works through three powerful mechanisms. First, conserved sexual energy gets redirected into building achievements that make you genuinely attractive. Second, scarcity around your attention creates value. People respect what they can't easily obtain. Third, visible self-control signals masculine strength that others instinctively recognize and respect. The transformation begins when you stop seeking sexual satisfaction and start building sexual attraction. Instead of pursuing experiences that deplete you, focus on becoming the kind of man others pursue. Instead of operating from need, operate from choice. Instead of consuming pleasure, create value that makes you irresistible. When you're not desperate for sexual validation, you become selective about partners and situations. This selectivity is attractive because it demonstrates standards and self-respect. People want to be chosen by someone who has options, not someone who accepts anyone willing to give them attention. Machiavelli understood that ultimate power comes from making others desire what you possess, rather than you desiring what they offer. Sexual energy becomes fuel for building the success, confidence, and authority that naturally attracts others. Your greatest vulnerability transforms into your greatest source of masculine strength. The result is a complete reversal of power dynamics. Instead of chasing, you become worth chasing. Instead of seeking validation, you become worth validating. Instead of being controlled by desire, you harness desire to build the life others want to be part of. This is how you reclaim your masculine authority permanently. If these revelations about desire and masculine power have shown you how your strength has been weaponized against you, take action now. Comment below and tell me which truth hit hardest. Realizing desire makes you predictable and weak? Understanding how others exploit your sexual energy? Learning that strategic discipline creates the respect you've been seeking? Share your biggest insight because I want to know which realization will transform your approach to masculine power. Smash that like button if you're ready to stop being controlled by desire and start controlling it strategically. Subscribe with notifications on because I share these profound masculine truths regularly. Insights most men never have the courage to face. Remember, your desire will either enslave you or empower you. The choice is yours.